Every man gets this wrong. You give her everything while she gives you the bare minimum. You respond in seconds while she answers when she feels like it. You plan dates, think about the future, replay your conversations at night like some emotional detective, and she treats you like a background character in her life. And then you sit there wondering why she doesn't take you seriously, why she doesn't respect your effort, why she acts like losing you would change absolutely nothing for her. Let me tell you something brutally honest that most men never hear. A woman will never value a man who doesn't value himself. And she will never fear losing a man who is terrified of losing her. Here's the truth men avoid because it hurts. You don't make her value you by giving more. You make her value you by giving less until she earns more. Most men do the opposite. You meet a woman, and suddenly she becomes the center of your world. Your phone lights up and you reply instantly, even if you are doing something important. She cancels plans and you justify it. She pulls away and you chase harder. You confuse effort with value, and that's why you end up in the same place every time, invisible, predictable, replaceable. Let me give you the rule that flips everything. Match her investment. Never exceed it. If she texts you one sentence, you text one sentence. If she takes 3 hours to reply, you take 3 hours. If she keeps things casual, you keep things casual. If she hesitates, you slow down. This isn't manipulation, it's emotional equilibrium. You want to know why this works? Because humans, not just women, are wired to value what isn't constantly available. Scarcity signals importance. Abundance signals desperation. I had a guy come to me, classic situation. He texted novels. She replied LOL. He sent voice messages. She sent emojis. He rearranged his life. She barely remembered he existed. I told him to stop overgiving. Respond short. Respond slow. Focus on his life again. 2 weeks later she suddenly cared. Suddenly she noticed. Suddenly she wondered what he was doing, who he was with, why he stopped orbiting her. Because the moment you stop drowning a woman in validation is the moment she realizes she can actually lose you. Here's what men never understand. Women don't lose attraction because you're a bad guy. They lose attraction because you're predictable, safe, eager, and overly available, everything that kills emotional tension. A woman values a man she's not completely sure she has. A woman fears losing a man who clearly has a life outside of her. A woman respects a man who is selective, not desperate. And that's what we're going to break down in this story, the psychology behind value, the mechanics of scarcity, and the emotional patterns that make a woman either cling to you, or completely ignore you. What you're about to learn will flip your entire mindset and finally show you how to be the man she values instead of the man she uses. Here's the part men never truly understand until it's too late. A woman doesn't lose interest suddenly, she loses it gradually, silently, microscopically, every time you make yourself too available. It starts small. She replies slower. Her tone gets colder. She stops asking questions. Your conversations go from energy to effort. And you feel it, that sinking panic in your chest, so what do? Exactly the opposite of what works. You chase harder. You text more. You double down on attention. You try to fix the energy by pouring more into a bucket that has already cracked open. And that's the moment she labels you in her mind. He needs me more than I need him. Once she thinks that, the dynamic shifts, permanently. Let me tell you something dark, but true. The more she feels you depend on her emotional approval, the less attractive you become. Not because she's cruel. Not because she's manipulative. But because human psychology punishes what is guaranteed and rewards what is uncertain. That's why the man who doesn't chase. The man who doesn't collapse into neediness. The man who can walk away. Always becomes the man she fights for. Not because he's better. But because he maintains something most men lose instantly. His emotional self-control. I coached a guy who made this exact mistake. He was dating a woman way out of his league, beautiful, social, high value. At first, she adored him. But then she started pulling away. Slow replies. Last-minute cancellations. Less eye contact. More excuses. And guess what he did? He thought the solution was to prove himself. Texted nonstop. Bought gifts. Offered reassurance she never asked for. He became emotionally naked, and she became emotionally numb. I told him to flip the dynamic instantly. Match her availability. Stop apologizing for existing. Prioritize his schedule. Start being the man she met, not the man she created. End the next conversation first. The transformation was insane. Within 10 days she asked if something was wrong. Within 2 weeks she was calling him first. Within 3 weeks she asked if they could talk about where this is going. Why? Because he went from chasing her energy to mirroring her energy. From emotionally excessive to emotionally calibrated. And here's the truth you need to tattoo into your mind. Women value what they can't fully predict. They invest in what they're not completely sure they own. They hold on to what they feel they might lose. A man who is busy, focused, disciplined, selective, not glued to his phone, not rearranging his life for last-minute plans. That man becomes rare. And rarity builds value. Value builds tension. Tension builds attraction. You want her to value you? Stop auditioning. You want her to fear losing you? Show, not tell, that you can walk away. Not by faking it. Not by pretending. But by actually having a life she must fit into, not one you abandon for her comfort. Because here's the twist most men never see coming. The version of you she fell for is always the version of you she fears losing. The version you become when you chase her is the version she discards. Here's the truth no one tells men because it sounds brutal, uncomfortable, and completely opposite to everything society teaches you. A woman values a man the most when he is fully present, yet fundamentally independent. This paradox confuses most men. They think love means merging. They think devotion means availability. They think attraction means prioritizing her above everything. But in female psychology, the opposite is true. A woman falls hardest for the man she cannot fully absorb. The man whose life existed before her. The man whose ambitions do not shrink to fit her. The man who has depth she can't fully reach, mysteries she can't decode, standards she must earn. Because here's the secret. Women don't fall in love by being chosen, they fall in love by having to compete for something valuable. You know what destroys women's interest instantly? When a man gives up his world to orbit hers. When he abandons his mission. When he sacrifices his identity to become her emotional security blanket. When he trades ambition for comfort, purpose for romance, discipline for attention. She didn't choose you for that. She didn't fall for you because you were empty. She fell because you were full. And the moment you empty yourself for her, she instinctively pulls away. Let me give you a real example. I worked with a man who lost everything chasing the wrong version of love. He had goals, momentum, discipline, a vision for his life. But when he met a woman who made his heart race, he collapsed completely into obsession. Stopped going to the gym. Neglected his projects. Changed his schedule for her. Became available 24/7. Turned into a man whose emotional stability depended on her attention. And she left. Not because she was cruel. Not because she wanted to hurt him. But because women are biologically, psychologically, evolutionarily repelled by men who abandon their mission for them. It signals weakness. It signals instability. It signals scarcity. The very thing he thought would show love was the thing that killed attraction. When I rebuilt him, I didn't teach him tricks. I didn't teach him manipulation. I taught him self-governance. The ability to say, my life continues with or without you. My mood is not controlled by your attention. My goals will not be interrupted because you're bored. My identity does not collapse under the weight of your emotions. And guess what happened? She came back. Of course she did. Not because he begged. Not because he chased. But because the man she first fell for, the uncompromising, mission-driven, self-respecting version of him, reappeared. Here's what women never admit out loud. They test you because they want to know if you'll break. They pull away because they want to see if you'll chase. They create emotional waves because they want to know if you can stay steady. It's not games, it's instinct. They are looking for a man who stays rooted while they shift, wobble, push, and pull. A man who remains a mountain, not a leaf. A man who can walk away. Not because he wants to, but because he can. That ability, that inner stability, is what creates value in her mind. Not your looks. Not your money. Not your effort. Not your devotion. Your inner world. This is why a disciplined man is dangerous. Why a busy man is attractive. Why a man with options is magnetic. Why a man with mission becomes unforgettable. Because she knows if she loses him, she loses something irreplaceable. Let me tell you what truly makes a woman fear losing you. Not punishments. Not disappearing acts. Not fake distance. But consistency in who you are. The man who has a vision bigger than her mood. A schedule she must fit into. Standards she must rise toward. Boundaries she cannot cross. A purpose that he protects fiercely. A life that does not shrink for anyone. This man becomes a psychological rarity. The kind of rarity that triggers instinctive investment. Instinctive desire. Instinctive fear of loss. When she realizes you aren't clinging. When she sees you aren't shaken by silence. When she notices you don't collapse under pressure. She stops taking you for granted and starts fighting for your place in her life. Not because you demanded it. Not because you begged for it. But because your value forces her to rise. Here's the darkest truth men refuse to swallow. You don't make her fear losing you by acting different, you make her fear losing you by being different. By being the man whose absence would actually matter. The man whose presence improves everything. The man whose time is valuable, whose standards are high, whose attention must be earned. A woman doesn't stay with a man because he loves her more than anything. She stays because he loves himself enough to not lose himself in the process. So here's your mission moving forward. Become the man she must invest in to keep. Become the man she must respect to stay close to. Become the man whose life is meaningful, structured, disciplined, full, with or without her. Because when you become that man, you don't need to make her fear losing you. She fears it automatically.